Okay, today we're going to start in Pre-Cal section 2.1. As y'all can see, I'm struggling with this a little bit. I'm trying to get used to it. So anyway, 2.1 is over quadratic functions. A lot of this stuff you already know. Some of it is going to be new to you, but most of it I think you already know. Basically, you know that we're in this form right here. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? There's a lot of things that you can tell me about this parabola. You know it's a parabola because it's squared, plus it's the quadratic function section. If a is greater than 0, then this opens up. If a is less than 0, then it opens down. And I'm not sure if you remember or not, but remember C is your y-intercept. Okay? Depending on stretches and things like that. But basically, you know that if it opens up, it has a minimum. Okay? And if it opens down, it has a max. And we've talked about how to find mins and maxes. And so you'll need to do that soon. But for right now, that's all that you really need to remember. Next, remember about your shrinks and your stretches. If A is greater than 1, then you've got, if A is greater than 1, you have a stretch vertically. Okay. If A is between 0 and 1, then you have a compression. I'm going to write shrink because I don't have a lot of room. Okay. And then, of course, if it's less than 0, it's going to open down, but we've already talked about that. So those are the basic things that you're going to have to remember for the parabola. Now, here's what I need you to know. We're going to refer to this as standard form, okay? Standard form of a parabola. Okay, and it's going to be f of x equals, so our function is equal to a times x minus h squared plus k. Okay. Your axis of symmetry is x equals h. That's just the x-coordinate of your vertex, okay? Because your vertex is going to be at hk. So let's write that down. Vertex is at hk. Now, what you want to remember is when you've got an equation in standard form and you pull the h out, you have to change the sign. K does not change. H, you change the sign. K does not. So those are the coordinates of your vertex. X equals whatever the x coordinate is, that's going to be your axis of symmetry. And of course, then A, it's going to tell you whether it opens up or down, depending on whether it's positive or negative. But that's standard form. So what we're going to do is we're going to take equations that we've seen in other forms and we're going to practice putting them in standard form. For example, let's take this equation right here. This is 2x squared plus 8x plus 7. Okay? And we're going to put that in standard form. All right? What we're going to do is we're going to have to complete the square. And a lot of you have been resistant on that, but we're going to have to learn to do that. That's really, really important to be able to do, to put these in standard form. Because remember, we want to get it into the form of y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. All right? The first thing that you're going to do is you have to make sure that this quadratic coefficient equals 1, but all we're going to do is worry about this x part right here. We're just going to complete the square in x. So what we're going to do first is to take that 2 out of just these first two terms. Okay, we're just kind of manipulating a little bit. Okay, so that gives us 2, and then x squared plus 4x. Now we're going to complete the square. Remember, this has to equal 1, this quadratic coefficient, and it does, it's a 1. And then we take half of our linear. Since our linear is 4, half of that would be 2, and you square that. So that gives you 4. Okay? Now then, complete the rest of your equation that you have left. Now what you have to realize is that you're working on one side of an equation, and you just changed this equation. Technically, didn't you just add 8 to this equation? Because 2 times 4 is 8, so you have to make up for that by putting minus 8. Because you're on the same side and you don't want to mess up your problem, Okay, this is not a completely different problem, you're just rewriting it. So compensate for that. Always consider your factor that you have out front, whatever you did with that, 2 times 4 was 8, then you do the opposite, subtract 8. Now, since we completed the square, we're going to write this as a perfect square trinomial, because as I've told you before, when you complete the square, that's exactly what you do, okay? So that's 2 times x plus 2 squared, and then you combine 7 minus 8, and that's minus 1. And now you have it in standard form. Y equals a times x plus h squared minus k. So in this case, our a is equal to 2. That just tells us that we have a stretch of 2 and it opens up. Okay? Our vertex, remember your vertex is hk, so you change the sign of the h value. So instead of 2, we're going to say negative 2. And then you put in the k, which is negative 1. You don't change the sign of it. That's your vertex. And there you go. Okay, so this has just been shifted left 2, down 1, and it opens up. So you can make a little sketch of it if you needed to. All right, negative 2, negative 1, and we know it's opening up, and it should be a little bit skinny because of that stretch of that 2. So there we go, and there's the equation. And we completed the square. Okay, let's try a different one. Again, we're going to take this and we're going to put this in standard form. And that's y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Okay, this one's a little bit different because you've got that negative, but remember we're going to do the same thing. We want this quadratic coefficient to equal 1, so let's factor out a negative, which makes that positive x squared minus 6x. Now go ahead and take half of your linear coefficient, which is 3, squared is 9. And then write down the rest of your equation, and you have to remember, check out what's front. You've got negative 1 times 9, so really you subtracted 9. So over here you need to add 9, because remember we've got to make our equation balanced. We can't do anything that changes the value of it. So now we're going to write this as the perfect square trinomial that we know how to do. Just factor that. Okay, remember perfect square trinomial, you do square root, square root. Okay, and then negative 8 plus 9 is positive 1. Okay, now we have it in standard form, and all you have to do is tell me the vertex. Remember, we want to change the sign, so our vertex is 3, 1. This has a negative out front, so it opens down. Okay. There's no shrink or stretch on this one. You could make a little sketch of it if you needed to. Over 3, up 1. There's your vertex. And you know it's opening down, and it's just kind of a normal width. Now, what we could do is we could also find the x-intercepts on that, so we're going to do that in the next slide. Okay. I'm going to take this, which is negative x squared plus 6x minus 8, and I'm going to have that equal to 0 because I want to find the zeros, the solutions, the x-intercepts, okay? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor a negative out of that leading term because I don't want to ever factor when I have a negative on there. It's going to make it a lot easier. Okay, now then we can factor that, and we're finding the zeros, and it's really going to give us a good graph once we can get the zeros and the vertex. So what are the factors of 8 that adding give us 6? What's going to be 2 and 4, right? And the signs are the same, they're both minus. So now you know x equals 2 or 2, 0 is an x-intercept, and 4, 0 is an x-intercept. Okay, so nice graph. Referring back to the slide before where our vertex was at 3, 1. Okay, there's your vertex. You know you're crossing at 2, 0, and you're crossing at 4, 0, and you know it opens down, so there's a perfect little graph. Because you were able to put that in standard form, find the vertex and the x-intercepts, and then you can graph it. Okay. All right, now then, one of the last things that we're going to look at that is a little bit different is that we're going to write the equation of a parabola. So I'm going to write that down. We're going to write the equation of a parabola. Try to abbreviate so I have plenty of room. With a vertex at 1, 2. So right away, you know your vertex represents HK, so that's going to be H right there and K right there. Okay? And then it's going to go through a specific point, and we'll say through 0, 0. Well, if that's a point, going through 0, 0 must be xy. Okay, so let's write that standard form down. Y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And then just start filling in values, and you know everything except a, so you're going to find a. Y, in place of y, you're going to put a 0. We don't know a, we're looking for it. In place of x, you're going to put a 0. In place of h, you're going to put a 1, and then you know to square that. And in place of k, you're going to put a 2. And then basically all you have to do is a little algebra 1. You're just going to solve for a. So that's 0 equals a times 0 minus 1 is negative 1 squared is 1 plus 2. And then when you just move the 2 to the other side, and doesn't 2 equal a? And then there you go. Now you're ready to write your equation. Okay? Y equals a that you just found times x minus h, which is x minus 1, squared plus k, which is 2, and you have it. And all you had to do is plug those values in. So you had h, you had k, you had x, you had y, you plugged everything into your standard form equation, and you found a, and then you were able to write your equation. Okay, I'll just remind you quickly of your formula for finding the x-coordinate of a vertex. I think that you already know this. You should already know that. Please tell me you already know that. Okay, x is equal to what? Negative b over 2a. All right, that's your x-coordinate. And then to find the y, you just plug that into the equation. All right, so that's all you would have to do. For example, let's say I have this equation right here. This one's a little bit busier than one we've done in the past, but it's still all the same thing. So we've got negative 0.0032 x squared. Okay, so if you know the skill, you can do it, and it's not hard because you know the formula and you're good at algebra, so you should be fine. All right, so we're going to say x equals negative b. In this case, negative b would be negative 1 over 2 times, and you got to put that whole decimal in there, negative 0.0032. So that's negative b over 2a. And when you type that in your calculator, okay, and you simplify that, everybody type that in and see if you get it. 156.25. And then all you have to do is to plug that into your original equation, and you should be able to find y. Okay, so f of x, which is the same thing as y, is going to be equal to negative 0.0032, all right, times 156.25, and we need to square that, okay, plus 156.25, and then we have to say plus 3. I'm out of room here, so I'm running down to the end. And when you type that in, you should get 81.125. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and write my vertex because now I know the x-coordinate, which was 156.25, comma, my y-coordinate, which was 81.125. Okay, so we've done all of that before. It's just that we didn't have maybe a decimal like that, but that's pretty much all that you have to do. So that's section 2.1. So refer to your packet, and you can do all of the problems that are in your packet. Hope you guys are doing well and having a good day. Bye-bye.